In this episode, we're going to be looking at installing Docker on Ubuntu Linux. Now, unlike Docker for Mac or Docker for Windows, this is a little bit more involved, but frankly, if you're using Ubuntu or any other Linux, you're probably familiar with the command line already, and if not, well, I'll be able to show you how to get through the steps to install Docker on Ubuntu in this episode. So no big deal, really. It's just a couple of copy and paste things, just a list of steps to follow through. Now, I'm at the docker.com homepage, but you really don't want to hit the Get Started with Docker button here. Instead, I'm going to head over to Google and run a search for Docker Ubuntu. And the first thing that comes up in that is the actual list of instructions that we need. Now, I am running a very recent, very clean install of Ubuntu 16.04, so it's going to be pretty simple for me to follow these instructions. You may need to do a few extra steps if you're running one of these previous versions of Ubuntu, but generally speaking, this documentation is okay. I had to kind of interpret a little bit of it, but I think we'll be able to get through it without too many problems. The first thing that we need to do is make sure that we actually meet the prerequisites, which include the Linux kernel, which we can get by running uname-r. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. I'm going to open up a terminal window here. Expand that to full size. I'll paste that in. And I see that I have version 4.4, which is good. Switch back over to Firefox. We need at least version 3.11.0-15. If we don't have that version or higher, Docker simply won't run. It needs features that are built in beyond that version. All right, so having done that, I need to make sure that I have my apt-get sources all up to date. So I'm just going to run that real quick. That's something that you constantly need to do throughout the instructions here, or at least they say that you do, although you don't always need to run it every single time that they tell you to. It just kind of depends on your system and how often you've done this. All right, so I've done an apt-get update. Looks like everything is good to go. And then I need to install a few things in order to get things really started. Copy, paste. This is going to install a certificate. And we need to add a GPG key. Make sure you copy all of this information here. The first time I tried this, I stopped at the end of this first line expecting that to be some output, but no, that was bad. You need to copy everything from this line all the way down through whatever wraps. Paste that into your window again. There we go. We've got that installed. Now, we need to create a Docker list for apt-get, which doesn't exist in a clean install. So I'm going to change directories into this folder. Change there. I'm going to sudo vim docker.list. Oh, I don't have vim installed. Let me do that real quick. Sudo apt-get install vim. Yes. All right, now that we have vim installed, I can do sudo vim docker.list. And inside of the docker.list file, we need to paste in this configuration. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong one. Make sure you're paying attention because I almost copied the one for Ubuntu 12.04. That would not be what I wanted. All right, Ubuntu 16.04. There we go. Copy, insert mode, paste, exit insert mode, right quit. And we're done with the Docker list. Now we need to run sudo apt-get update once again to make sure that we got everything. Sudo apt-get update. So this is going to pull down all of the information from the Docker repository, which will allow us to actually install Docker. Okay, purge the old repo if it exists. We don't have an old one. This is a clean install. Verify the policy. Yeah, don't really need to do this since this is a fresh install, but I'm going to run it anyways just to prove that I do have the correct list of repositories for Docker. All right, so now there are some other prerequisites that you may need to install depending on which version of Linux, the Ubuntu you're actually working with. So let's see, for Ubuntu, recommend install the Limage extra kernel. Let's go ahead and install this. I don't remember if this is actually required or not for 16.04. We're going to run it anyways. Looks like was not installed. Oh, actually, it looks like it was already installed, and now it's set to manually installed. Great. That's fine, though. So if you're on 16.04, you really don't need to install this. It's already there. Not a big deal, though. go ahead and install Docker. Now, this is something that we can skip, this 1204 instructions. If you're on 1204, well, you're going to need, or 1404, you're going to need to install AppArmor, which you do through apt-get install AppArmor. And then if you're on 1204, you're going to need these additional pieces before you move on. However, we're not doing that. We don't really need to do that. We can skip past the 1204 instructions here and go straight to install. All right, we're going to go. Now, we just did an update. We don't need to do that. So we're just going to go straight to installing Docker Engine. That's the important piece here. That's the actual Docker system. Yes, let's install. All right, we've got Docker installed. If I run docker-version at this point, we see that we have Docker installed. However, we're not quite done yet with Ubuntu. Since Ubuntu is a more secure operating system, has things locked down more tightly, if we actually tried to Docker run a particular image at this point, not fun, Docker run a particular image, we would end up getting an error saying that we can't access Docker, or maybe it's not running and we need to start it up. So you can either do sudo docker run for all your commands, sudo docker whatever, or there's some additional documentation that we're going to go through here in a second that will allow us to not have to do sudo every time we want to run anything inside of Docker. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit and we'll see the optional configuration where we want to create a Docker group. Now actually, I think Docker created this group for me. So I'm going to copy and paste this anyways, but once I paste it in here, yes, that Docker group already exists. So now I'm going to add my current user to that Docker group. So now my current user is in the Docker group, which is great. I need to actually log out and log back in before I can run this hello world, however. So I'm going to do that real quick. Where is my logout? Here we go. Log out. Log in again real quick. All right, so I've logged out and I've logged in again. I'm going to open up I'm going to open up a terminal window and run docker-version again. We can still see that I have the correct version installed, but the important thing that I wanted to do next was found in the instructions at the bottom of that list. So let me scroll back down to that once this page comes back up. Okay, so create a Docker group. All right, here we go. So now that I've scrolled back down to where we need to be, we can run this Docker hello world example. So I'm just going to run Docker run hello world. And this is going to create a very basic image and container inside of Docker, and it's going to run. It says hello from Docker. This message says that your installation appears to be working correctly. Excellent. We now have Docker installed on Ubuntu, and we can, at this point, go about doing everything that we need to do with Docker. So stay tuned for the next episodes of WatchMeCode.net, where I look at some basic management of Docker images and then installing some images that will help in our development environment and development process. Thanks for watching, and happy Dockering.